queue. I am now recording. So today's topic is tough. If anybody's looking for extra credit, this is a good chance to like make some resources for other students. Merge conflicts and stuff are just, they're really confusing to deal with. So maybe you have an easier way to explain it. You could have like a video or some notes, things like that. That's a really good opportunity for extra credit. All right, so today we are talking about branching with Git, and then merge conflicts, and then finally some time to work on homework 7. I want to start just by doing a recap of the Git flow that we hopefully have all been using now and have a basic understanding of. So when we're talking locally, then you're changing some files. You can use Git status to see like what is being tracked, what's not. Then you can use git add and then the file names in order to basically say that these changes are ready to be committed. Make Git know that. And then you officially save some group of changes as a commit that you can look back on then in your project history. And then you keep repeating this. So that's why we ask for multiple commits, because you don't want to just do your entire project in one commit. You can't really like look through and see like if there were issues, like at what point it was, because it's just everything. And like maybe something crashed and you didn't get to like put all of your changes up onto GitHub. If you were constantly making commits in smaller chunks, then again, similar to like saving early and saving often, if you commit early and often, then you would be able to have a bunch of chunks to look back on over time. And then there was this concept of local versus remote repositories. So we started out locally in our own Cloud9 terminal. And then we actually were able to share this code with the larger world using remote repositories. So who can tell me what the difference is between local and remote in like plain words? Local's on your computer. Yeah, it is. That's true. And then what would we say remote is? Where's that? Remote's on a server somewhere. Yeah, okay, cool. So not on your own computer. Remote is like GitHub, so that's an example of remote. What's another remote that we've used? Heroku. Yeah. So Zach said Heroku. We were pushing to our remote Heroku repository, which is how we were able to deploy something using their service. So we weren't pushing to GitHub in order to deploy. We were using Git and pushing it to Heroku. Mike, Mercurial is another version control system similar to Git, but that is separate. So when we added this remote sort of concept into our regular flow, then there were a few things we were doing. We first need to somehow tell our local repo what that remote one is. So you could do git remote add origin and then the URL, which is saying, I have some remote repository, I'm calling it origin, and this is where it's linked to. This is that server URL. And you get that from GitHub in GitHub's case. So that's probably what you've used most, and that's why you're saying git pull or git push origin main, because origin is your remote repository name, and then main is just the branch that you're pushing. So at the end of the changes that you've made, you would probably first want to pull in order to get like any remote changes that were made that aren't on your local repo. So maybe you edited the README on github.com itself. Well, you're not going to see that in your local files because you haven't done pull yet. Only then would you do that. And then you would push your changes actually to GitHub using git push. So that's kind of just the whole flow so far. So this is fine, this is okay, but it's obviously not great. We can make this better. Does anybody see any issues with what we've been doing so far? Any trade-offs, any drawbacks with this flow? John said you can't work with teams. Yeah, so You technically could work with teams, like if you're all kind of pushing to GitHub on the same repository, because once we have remote there, then you can access all the code on the same one. But you're still making a point in that it can be a little messy to work with teams. So if everybody's pushing to the same main branch on GitHub, then there might be a lot more conflicts, bugs, things like that, which is why branches can be useful. Ronak took you 2 hours to get these steps right. Yeah, you just got to keep doing it, and someday it's just gonna you'll know it on the back of your head. But yeah, there can be conflicts when you work with teams, like between file changes that are the same. We haven't been using branches. I think that you guys are on the right track here. And yeah, so Git branching is a huge thing we've been missing. Maybe some of you are using it, maybe some of you weren't. But now I want all of us to be using it. So branching is basically a way that you can separate out your concerns with source control. So a branch can be made of pointing to multiple commits, but it's basically just saying like one branch is going to be dealing with one sort of feature or bug or something you're working on that's kind of its own little package, maybe like a milestone if you're thinking in projects terms. So you're not just doing all your code on master, you're kind of separating away in order to work on something specific in your branch. And when you were creating a new repository, so you'd start with git init, it would always make that default branch called main or master. But unless you were doing anything more, you would always stay on that branch. So you probably didn't even notice it. The main branch, though, we want that to always be stable and bug-free. And we don't want to be using that for feature development. So that's not how we should be doing Git in the right way. And yeah, Gerard, that's a good point. So this flow here, it's super long and you're going to be doing the same sorts of commands over and over. If you remember when we did Git aliases, or not Git aliases, but just aliases in general with Bash, then you can make these shortcut commands to make this a lot easier and faster. So you could chunk steps 8 and 9 here together. So you pull always before you push, things like that. I'm breaking everything out here just so that you don't lose sight of every single step within it. But once you understand all these steps, I definitely encourage you to like streamline it for yourselves. Yeah, Janice, I've done that too. Like if you make the README on GitHub and then you try to push, it's not going to let you because you need to pull first from your remote. So there can be issues there. All right, so the right way for doing this, I took the same flow, but I'm adding in these green changes here. The first thing you want to do is before you make your changes, you want to create a new branch for your feature. So you can do that with git branch, the branch name. Then you can switch over to that branch, git checkout, and then the branch name. There's shortcuts for this that you can look up. But again, I'm just trying to explicitly list everything out. And then you're going to change your files, edit, add, delete, but only related to that feature. So not just like generally all the things you want to do for this project or something. You're going to do the same flow, make a commit. But then once you've made a commit, now you can switch back to main basically. So you can do git checkout main. And you can actually reconcile the changes that you made in this new branch with your main line of development. So once all the code in your branch is ready to go, you've tested it, it's working, and you feel like you're ready to integrate it back into your like official main code base, then you can do git merge and then the name of your branch. So that's kind of where things like conflicts are going to come up, and we'll talk about that as well. And then you want to just keep repeating these steps for different features that you have, like different branches, basically. So there's not a lot I'm adding here, but the main key points are that you start with the branch and you end with merging that branch into main. And some other tips, I said this last time too, but you want to make sure that individual commits that you're working on, they shouldn't be more than like 200 lines of code. So I don't want to see like an entire HTML file being created with everything inside of it already like listed out, like your links and your pictures and stuff, good, ready to go. You want to slowly add more and more to it. So you could start with like the HTML skeleton, and then you could slowly add like the pictures, and then you can add the text and things like that. So you want to slowly build on it. And whenever you think about like your projects, always think about like, how can I break this down into smaller and smaller chunks? And the smaller, the better, actually. And yeah, again, kind of similar to what I've said, the feature development you do should be on a separate branch. So when you're in, like when you're doing, I'll get into this after this, but in general, you just don't want to develop on main and be pushing to main. So you want to be merging into main instead. So I want to ask you guys, based on this, what do you think are the benefits? Like, why should we care about this flow instead of that basic Git flow? We are adding some steps, we're adding a little bit of pain with things, but what's the benefit of branching? John said, yeah, so you don't want to push everything to main. Lamon said, more organized at scale. Yeah, so imagine like 100-person team and everybody is just pushing into master. You're going to lead to a lot of issues and bugs and things like that that you could slow down if you have branches going on. You can have multiple teams. Yeah, Nakib. So that can make it easier if you have like different branches for different like teams, and then you can branch off of those branches. So you can kind of start an organization of how different code bases are for different teams as they're slowly developing onto the main one. Main is always functional, Elvis. Yeah, so this is when you're deploying your main branch to your users, they're actually being able to like use the code on your main branch. Then you don't want to have bugs and issues with that. You want to have a peace of mind that everything that the users are seeing are not going to have any issues. Maybe the branches are going to have issues, but that's okay because that's not deployed yet. And yeah, it's harder to mess up the main branch exactly. Similarly, organization, yeah, better updates. You can organize your code just like conceptually into features rather than trying to just do everything at once and as much as you can in like 2 hours or something. So you're thinking in terms of features and like iteration instead of just like coding everything up. And it's super effective at companies. Like when I was at a startup, then we would have a bunch of different branches depending on like our teams and things. Nobody could push to master. There were like a few steps in between. And then similar thing at Facebook, we also do that. So yeah, in the industry, like you guys said, like this is just really big for companies in general. This is how you're going to have to do it. If you're at a company, you're not just going to be pushing straight to master. So it's important to know this just because of that. And then in this class itself, for the next two projects, you're going to need to use branching. So project two is a lot more complex than project one. Um, and you want to be able to like have smaller commits where you can roll back to like stable points. And you also we're going to require that each milestone is done on a separate branch. So you're kind of forced to think in these terms. And then with project three, you're actually working with other people. So then it's like extra important. You have a small company of your own basically, and you don't want to screw up the code for everybody on the team. You first want to test it yourself in your branch before you're doing any pushing. Cool. So now we are going to do a demo. I'm going to show you branching. So get your Cloud9 open if you want to follow along. Let me open it up. All right. So we're going to be talking about how to do the Git branching workflow in an example project. Let's start out on our Cloud9 by CDing into the directory that we used last class when we did the Heroku deploying. So this was the one with the New York Times app. For most of you, I think it should be called Lex6 Demo Heroku with dashes in between. So I'm going to CD into that. And now we're going to figure out, with this project, we're starting at some place, but let's add some more features on. So let's think of this in terms of iterating on a piece of code and adding new features on. What are some new features that we could add on in this case? Well, let's take a look at it first. I'm going to run it with Python app.py, and I'm going to preview it here on the side. So if you remember, we're showing like what's being reported about something, and then you have like a headline and then a snippet from those article results. One thing we could do is add on like the publishing date. So you see this here, but like, when was this news actually being reported? Another useful thing is that we're talking about New York Times articles. It would be nice to actually be able to see that full article. So maybe have a link to it. So these are two ideas that we're starting with. Let's do some branch development to implement them. To start off, let's make a new branch. So to do that, you would type in your terminal git branch and then the name of your branch. So if we're going to start with dates, let's say article dates. Now, actually, I was testing this earlier, so it says it already exists, but that would work otherwise. You can type in git branch just by itself in order to see what all the branches are in your current local repository. So I see main here and I see article dates. Main currently has a star on it, and you also see main in parentheses next to your directory name, which means that's the branch that you're currently working on. So how do we move to the new branch we want to work with for this specific feature? You would do git checkout and then the name of your branch. So in this case, article_dates. Now it says switch to branch. You can see here, article dates is now the new thing in the parentheses here. So we are good to go with that. Now let's actually code the changes that we wanted. So I've already looked this up. I know how to do this, but what we can do is within the article kind of object that we get in our response, you're going to have a field called pub_date. Let me just confirm it right here in the docs. Yeah, so it's pub_date. So I'm going to use another helper function. In this case, instead of get snippet, it's get date, which just gets that field from the object. And then I'm going to add a new list here. So dates equals map. And this is just another function that makes it easier to basically take in a list of something and then return a different list based on a function. So I want to take in my articles and then return only a list of the dates, which will make it easier to pass down into HTML. So I have that here. You can just follow along by copying. And then I'm going to pass it in and also convert it to a list. Again, you don't need to know the specifics here. We're just focusing on the Git workflow. That's more important. So I'm going to pass in Git, or not Git, but dates here in the object I'm returning. And then I'm going to pass those dates to my HTML using the render template arguments. Okay. Cool. And then final thing we want to do is actually be able to show that date in our UI. So maybe after the headline in parentheses, I can throw in the date for that article and then close parentheses. Okay, that should be good. But of course, whenever you make a change, you want to test it first. So let's run Python app.py. Then let's preview this. I'm going to open it into a new browser. And here we go. Nice. So you have your headline. And then in parentheses, you can see like this was written February 2nd. This was written January 15th. So it gives you a better idea of the timeline of these articles. It's in a weird long format. We're not going to get into how to make that prettier for now, though. So we tested it. We know that everything works. Next thing we want to do is make sure we commit this. So I'm going to do git status, and I see these are the 3 files that have changed here. And I'm going to do git add -a, which means just add all of these files to the staging area, which is just saying these changes are now ready to be committed. And then we're actually going to commit them. So remember, we want to do commits in small chunks whenever we've made like a some small change that we can look back on. And we can write git commit -m and then have a descriptive message, because when you want to look back into your history, you want to be able to know, oh, here's where I made those changes to the product, which can make it easier if you want to go back or see the history to see like what changes were needed, things like that. So here I'm going to write added publishing date to article. Okay, so that's done. And then now that we have this here, let's work on the other feature we were talking about. So we were saying it would be nice to have like a link to the article. We have one kind of working branch right now, but let's move to a different one. So how do you create a new branch? It is git branch, the name of the branch. So let's do git branch and then article links. And then git checkout article links will take us to move us to that branch. So now we've switched over. If I type in git branch, then you can see and confirm that you have 3 branches now: your main, article links, and article dates. Okay. So now that I'm here, so actually one thing I messed up here is that I made my new branch while I was currently on my article dates branch. So you can keep branching off of branches and go further and further. That's kind of where the term branches becomes more apt there. But if you want to be kind of making a change to your main line of development, then you want to be branching from that main branch, not from other branches. So let's backtrack here. I'm actually going to delete article links, which I made here. To do that, you can do git branch -d and then the name of your branch. So this can be useful also after you've made a new feature and merged it into your main branch. You can get rid of this old branch. So it's going to say I can't actually delete it because I'm currently in that branch. To do that, to get out of that branch, you can obviously do git checkout, and then let's go to article dates. So I'm in dates. Now let's try actually deleting it. And it's successfully deleted. And if I run git branch, I can see that it's gone. Next thing I want to do is let's go back to main. So git checkout main. When I do that, you're actually going to see that my code changes went away. And that is actually great and expected because we only wanted those code changes on our branch that was dealing with our new feature. We haven't actually merged it in or anything yet. So this is how you can deal with multiple versions of your code just within your local workspace. But now that we're on main, let's make a new branch, which is what we wanted to do, and do git branch article underscore links. So we're branching off of main. Then we're going to do git checkout article links and git status. And it shows we're on this branch links, nothing to commit. Working tree is clean. So let's actually make this change to the links now. One thing we can do here is let's get similar to what we were doing last time, let's get those URLs. So there's going to be a field called web URL that you can get from the article object. We're going through a similar flow where we add a list that is using this helper function in order to get that list of URLs and pass it into our returned object. So we do that here. And then again, we pass this into our render template function in order to access this data on the front end. Okay, so I did URLs equals article data. Okay. And then finally, let's actually make this headline a link. So what we can do is use the -a, or not -a, but brackets a tag, which is for links. And then you can use the href attribute in order to set the actual link. So here I'll do URLs I, so the URL for this given article index. And then on the other side of the headline, we're going to do close -a, or close a, to have the closing tag. So now what we would expect is the article headline should be a link as well to the actual article. Again, you want to make sure you test it before you commit things, make sure everything's working. I'm going to do Python app.py, and then let us preview this. Awesome. So now you see that the styling has changed just because default styling for links is like blue and underlined. And if I click this one, TikTok is posed to outlast Trump and to test Biden, then this opens to the article. So this is awesome. Now you can see we've made this more useful with this new feature. And we have another new feature, which is for the date. So we have two features going on two different branches. Is we had made those changes to show the article links, but we had not actually committed them. So remember to first do git add -a. Here, all of these changes we want to basically allow Git to track. So we do that. Let's see. Oops, it didn't work. I think I had to do capital A. Okay, so we do that. And then now let's make a commit to all these changes. So all of these changes can be bundled nicely into a commit. There's not a lot of lines of code being done here, just like a few lines in each file. And it all led to one result, which was adding links to article headlines. Perfect. And then we can check out back to main, and we'll notice that all those changes that we worked on, again, are not going to be there anymore. This file is what it used to be when we started. Don't freak out about that. That's expected because we are not on our working branch anymore. Okay, yeah. And Nathan brought up a good kind of confusing point is you want to make sure that whatever changes you have on that branch is committed, so that the branch, those changes are actually like tied to that branch. Otherwise, those changes are just going to move around with whatever branch you're on, if they're not committed. So again, before you switch branches and you've made changes, make sure you commit those changes. Okay, any questions with that so far? All right, and these are on YouTube again, so you can always look back at them on your own time. So then I'm going to dive into the next part. We did the first steps where you kind of make your changes on your branch, you commit those changes, and then we're back to main now, and you don't have those changes anymore on your main branch. So now if we're ready, we can actually merge those changes from our branch into our main. And that is what we'll go over next. When you do that, though, you can often lead to conflicts. Maybe you change something in main, but that was like the same line of code that you changed in your branch. So that's where merge conflicts can come into play. So basically, a merge conflict is going to occur whenever there's some collision between your local repo and then the changes that you're making to that repo. So when I'm saying local repo right now, I'm saying like your main. Most of the time when you're doing this, Git is going to figure it out on its own. It'll kind of automatically figure out what to merge if they're on like different parts of the file or something like that. But sometimes this gets complicated when you're dealing with like the same line of code in the file and changes are being made from two different places to that same line of code. And these sorts of conflicts can result when you do git pull. So maybe you're like getting somebody else's code from GitHub and they made a change that you're also working on like in the same place in the code base. Then that could lead to a conflict. You could also lead to a conflict if you just do git merge with your own branch and you're trying to merge it into main. So maybe the latest code in main that you wrote yourself conflicts with the changes that were made in branch. So when you run into a merge conflict, basically what's going to happen is you're going to try to do git merge your branch name, and then the terminal is going to complain. So it's going to say, oh, we found some conflicts in these files. Go to these files and fix them. So here's an example. Let's say you go to one of those files. You're going to see these funny symbols. You're going to see like head, equal signs, and then like these brackets in all caps, basically. And what these are saying is at the top, you have head, and in between head and the equal sign are whatever change that you made in your latest commit on your main branch. So maybe you said print this way, and that was like the change that you made in the latest commit. And then between the equal sign and then the, I guess, everything after that, so you're going to see like better print statements at the bottom. And that's basically the name of the branch that you're trying to merge in, like the incoming change. And there you're going to see like what line of code were you trying to do in this incoming merge. So originally in head, you have print this way. And when you're trying to merge, you're changing it to print that way and gets confused. It's like, which one should I pick? And you have to tell them manually which one you want to pick. So John, let me just see your question. Yeah, so you create your branch, do your changes, commit them, and then you check out to main. You first need to merge your changes into main, and then you can do your pushing. So to resolve the merge conflicts, you basically need to, one, get rid of all those funny symbols, and two, choose between like those two versions of the code, which one you want to keep. So in this case, I'm basically saying, I want to keep the line print that way that I had in my incoming branch that I'm merging. And I'm going to delete the old way of doing it from head. So this is the way I want to go with it, basically. On the other hand, maybe I realize that the change made in head is actually the way to go. I hadn't noticed this when I was doing the branch, but this new commit came and somebody, maybe it was you, maybe it was like somebody on your team, said they want to do print this way. So you're like, okay, cool. We can go with that. And then you delete all the funny symbols and you're going to delete your code or like the incoming code so that you choose the head instead. And then you don't have to do like one or the other. You could either do both or neither as well. So maybe I want both print statements. I could delete all the funny symbols and leave both print statements. Or I could just delete everything and be like, based on what I'm seeing, I actually want to do it in a third way, which could be like print neither way. So you have a lot of kind of agency here. You have a say in like how you want to resolve the merge conflict. And you're gonna have to think about what makes the most sense. So I showed you a few things, like you can either accept what changes were made locally. This isn't worded the best, so not remote, but like what changes are incoming, or maybe you combine them or something like that. And there's no right answer. So your strategy is just going to depend on the situation and like what code you want to end up seeing. All right, so now I am going to slow this down into a demo, and you guys can hopefully follow along as I play this one. Okay. All right, and again, just let me know if you have questions throughout all this. Now let's talk about how to move these changes from the branches of development into our main branch. So let's start by just talking about how you can do that on your command line. When you're in main, then you do the command git merge, and then the name of the branch that you want to merge into main, which is what you're currently on. So how about we start with article, what were the two? There's links and dates. Let's start with dates. So git merge article dates. Now you're gonna see, it's gonna show you there were some changes, like 5 lines of change in New York Times and blah, blah, blah. And you're also gonna notice that your file changed, so some new lines got added. And now this date code that we wrote is actually in our main branch. So I'm gonna run python app.py. I'm gonna preview this, and the dates are showing up. So we have this code in our main branch. That's awesome. We can do git status. Now our branch is ahead. Our main branch is ahead by 1 commit, which means that we were able to merge this 1 commit that we had made in our article dates branch into our main branch. This is all local though, so let's take this code and then actually push the changes onto GitHub. So whenever you want to push a change, the first thing that's important to do is just make sure you're working with the latest changes from your remote repository. So maybe you edited a README on the UI side on github.com, but that hasn't been reflected here. Or maybe you were working with a few other people like Project 3, and in that case, they've made some changes and you don't have them reflected in your local place. So always pulling before you push will make sure that you're allowed to push because you have the latest changes. So just enter in my password when I do git pull. And it'll say already up to date if it is, which is great. So nothing to do there. Next thing to do is push these changes to GitHub. So I'm going to do git push origin main. Origin is the remote repository, so that GitHub repository that you set at the beginning. And then main is the branch that you're pushing to. So I'll do that. Again, if you don't want to type in your username and password, you can set up SSH keys like I showed in my slides last class. So it's successfully pushed. I can open up this remote repository and just refresh this. Okay, and we have this commit, the latest one, added publishing date to article. Now let's deal with the other one. So actually, one thing we can do is do git branch. And now that dates is officially on to main and pushed to GitHub and everything, we don't actually need it anymore. So let's delete it. To do that, if you remember, we do git branch -d and then the name of the branch, article dates. So we've successfully deleted it, and you can delete it as soon as you're done with your feature and you've merged it successfully. Now let's do article links. So how do we merge? If you remember, we use the command git merge article, and then in this case, we're doing article links. Remember, you have to be on the branch that you're merging into, and then in your command, you're talking about the branch that you are merging. So I'm on main because that's what I want to merge into, and I'm merging article links. All right, so when we do that, you see some scary errors, but don't worry, it's not as bad as it looks. It'll say merge conflict in this file, and this file, and this file. It'll usually automatically try to merge, but if it can't actually do that, when you're changing the same lines of code, which we did, then you're gonna have to do some stuff manually. And this is totally normal. Like maybe your partner on a project was also adding links and you were adding dates, and you had to change the same parts of code. So that just kind of happens. Let's actually deal with this now. So there's kind of a UI here, which shows that Cloud9 is parsing it nicely, actually. Usually you're gonna see like a lot of greater than signs, and then head, which is basically saying, here is the change of code, or here's the line of code that you currently have in your current kind of latest branch, or current branch and latest commit. So that would be that line of code where we have dates. And then in the blue, so this is going to be based from the branch that you're trying to merge right now. It's going to show you, here's the line of code that is conflicting with that same line in the green. So basically what GitHub got confused about is, or Git in this case, is on line 22, in one place we have this line, article data dates in our latest commit. And then in another place in our new feature, we have this other line, which is the URLs, article data URLs. So this is a conflict, but in this case, we actually want both of these things of code. So we need to tell Git that in the case of this conflict, I actually want to keep both changes, not one or the other. So here it's going to say use me, or use both. So for my case, I want to actually use both. So I could click use both. And what it's going to do is it's going to add both those lines of code, dates and URLs. So I've made that change, and that should have taken care of one file, but now let's look at the others. So it said there's also one in NYT. So let's open up NYT. Similarly, you can see here that we added a function in our last commit. And remember, head is just talking about kind of the latest commit that it's pointing to on your main branch. So here, the UI is kind of not hiding this like less than sign and head. So this is kind of what we were talking about before, and this equal sign, and then the greater than sign. So this is how it's splitting up the current changes and then the incoming changes when you're merging. All you have to do is just manually get rid of this if you don't want to use the buttons, and here it looks like it's just being buggy. So in my case here, again, you have to think about like which lines of code do you want to keep and which ones you want to get rid of when you have a conflict. In this conflict, I actually want to keep both. So I have my dates, I also have my URLs, and both are really functions that I will need in this file in order to have both features implemented. Now, you can get rid of these lines, but you're going to see that there is kind of a repeat here. So the first part of that, the headlines and snippets, is repeated in both the main branch as well as the incoming branch. Since that's the case, we can get rid of one of those and we only want the other. So I'm going to delete this top here, and I'm going to have def get URLs. So I'm going to keep that function here. That's what we wanted with article links. And then you're actually going to see that the dates one is missing. So let me undo. In the end, I want headlines, snippets, URLs, and then also date. So you have to have a good understanding of what code you want to end up with and what it was looking like before in order to solve this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two out here. So those were the repeats. I'm going to copy dates in here. So this is where it should have been. And then there's one more conflict here. In this case, you can just use the UI if you want and say use both. And it's going to make sure that you're passing both dates and URLs down into the return. So this is good. You save the file. And then finally, let's go to this last file. So in your head, you are adding the dates along with the headlines in parentheses. And then in your incoming change from article links, you're changing headlines and wrapping a tag around it. So we're talking about the same line of code here. We were doing two different things. And now we need to find a way to merge it. Again, you need to know what the code you want to look like in the end in order to make the feature work in both cases. So in the dates case and the links case. To do that, I want to keep the link here. So I want this A tag still here. But I want to add in this line of code from dates and maybe add that in after the headline, similar to what we did in the green. So I'll throw that in here. And now I can get rid of this version as well as this head and equal sign. And then again, get rid of this right here. So you need to make sure you get rid of those three lines and then you choose which code you want. I've done that now, so I can save. And what I would expect is to see both features now successfully working in the same app. So let's first of all just test it. Let's make sure that what we're trying out here, what we hoped to merge, was working out. So I'm going to run the app. I'm going to preview. I'm going to open it up into the browser. And perfect. So you know that your merge changes were, you merged them successfully because you see the links here as well as the dates. So we have both features working in our main branch. So make sure that once you've solved some merge conflicts, that you make sure you test and you're getting the right things without errors. So now I'm going to run git status. It's saying you have unmerged paths, fix conflicts, and then run git commit. So I have fixed the conflicts because I went in file by file and chose what code I want to keep and get rid of. And then now I need to just commit it. So let's do git add -a. And then it'll say all conflicts fixed, but you are still merging. So I just told git the changes I made and it's saying all the conflicts are fixed, so you're good to go, but you're not going to be done with the merge until you actually make a commit. So let's do git commit merged changes from article from head commit, which was article dates, and incoming commit, which was, or I'm going to say incoming branch, which was article links. So this is super clear again. It's a very clear message that you could look back at and see and like, oh, here's why I did this sort of stuff in order to deal with the merge conflict. Cool. So I've committed. Now let's do git status. And there is no message showing up that's saying you have unmerged paths. Everything is working as expected. And then the final thing you can do is git pull from your remote, just to make sure that there haven't been any changes on your remote repository. And there shouldn't have been because it's been like 15 minutes and nobody has access to my repo. But once you confirm that, then you can do git push origin main. So I'm pushing to my origin repository, my main branch. And I misspelled my username. So let's try that one more time. NumNMJIT and then password. Okay, So successfully pushed. I'm going to open this up in GitHub. I'm going to check out my commits. And here, now you're going to see, here's the commit that I made initially for the date. Here is the commit that I made on my branch. So this was on my, my article links branch. And then I merged that branch into my main, which is why this shows up. And to confirm that merge, I have this final commit, which is saying merge changes, blah, blah, blah. Cool. So this is super good to know about and then just like practice on your own. I used to like, I remember back when I was interning and stuff, I would just try to avoid merge conflicts like at all costs possible. If I would just like recreate code or something like that, or like delete my branch and like make a new one on the newest version of master or main. So those are all things you could do, but then it's going to slow you down and you're going to end up running into merge conflicts at some point. Like I have to deal with them probably like once a week or something on the job. So you don't want to have to like keep finding workarounds. You want to just deal with these merge conflicts head on. And the only way you're going to get to do that is by practicing. Any questions before we move into some independent time with our homework? Can I show that final index file? Yes, I can. One sec. The step after the fix, yeah, so if you run git status Ronak, it'll tell you like you need to basically make a commit or I guess the first thing you need to do is git add, yeah, so that you can tell Git like I've made these changes to fix the conflicts. And then you do git commit to officially kind of record the changes that you made. So similar to whenever you change any files and edit them, you have to do git add and git commit. All right, I'll open up that final index file in a second. Jamie, let me first just send the people off who want to start working. So homework 7 is on Canvas now. I'm going to give you all about 20 minutes to work on them on your own. You can ask me questions. I'm here, ask each other questions. And it's going to be a fun homework. We're basically going to start with a bare bones like Flask app. And then you guys are all as a class, so like all 45 of you are going to make like small changes to this app and slowly increment on it and like build whatever you want. So I'm pretty interested to see like what direction it takes. I'm leaving it completely open. You can decide the theme and whatnot. The only thing that you have to do is make sure that since you're all pushing to the same repository, you're probably going to run into conflicts. And if those conflicts happen, then you have to make sure you keep the code for that other students made. So you don't delete those, but you also keep your own code. So you have to accept both changes in some way. And then you'll like test it and then merge and go through this whole flow that I talked about. Yeah, Elvis, so you're going to make branches. You're going to code your change in that branch, and then you're going to try to merge it and then push it eventually. So all the instructions are on Canvas, like each step you have to take. Open that up and get started. Let me know if you have questions throughout, and let me open up that index file for Jamie. Okay, I had the file open, Jamie, take a look. Anybody else who wanted to take a look? And Jamie, let me know when you're good, and then I'll stop sharing the video. And I'll play a little music since it's quiet. John, for your question, yeah, when you clone it, then you should pull just so you are working on the latest changes. So always pull when you're doing anything with remote repositories. And Peter, nice. Congratulations on being the first commit. I see a few more changes coming in. There's a header with some bolding going on. Looks like Joseph was the second commit. One thing I actually want to tell you guys, let me see. So you might notice that in the commits on GitHub, you're showing up as EC2 default user, something like that. If you want to change your actual name so that it shows up with the right name, you can run this command that I'm putting in the chat. Okay, guys, come back to Zoom. I will just give the closing announcements like usual. Okay, so first thing, just if those of you who are curious, this is what the page looks like so far. Gerard has a lot of visibility right now. Nice job. But it's good. It's looking good. Let's see where it goes. I hope to see more and more sophistication after this. But hopefully you guys are dealing with conflicts through all this. Cool. So yeah, before next class, finish homework 7. I have this link here if you want to like do an interactive tutorial with Git branching. It can be helpful if you're still struggling with the concept, which is totally fine. It's a tough one. And milestone 2 is due this coming Sunday or Monday, or whenever the date is. So start working on the Genius API. I'm not going to show you how to use that. You're just going to be on your own, and you should be able to do that yourself. And then just like doing the styling and all of that. So good luck with that. And then next class, we will start with JavaScript and get into a little bit of React. So this will all be a part of our next unit and our next project. So we'll be moving forward. Cool. Yeah, I'm glad it was fun, Nikki. How do you cancel a merge, Peter? You can do like, if you do git status, it'll show you how to abort it, basically. That's what they call it. Nice. I'm glad to hear that. Wait, are you guys talking about the project or are you talking about the homework? Nice. Okay, cool. Nice, nice. Well, that's good to hear. And I think that being forced to do it, it's the only way to learn how to do merge conflicts. And I'm excited to see. I'll show you guys what the end product is next class. All right, take care. I will see you Thursday.